Okay, so get this. We're diving into this case. And it starts out like maybe an accident, and then it gets really strange.
Yeah.
We're in Orlando, Florida, back in 2020, and we've got Sarah Boone and her boyfriend, George Torres Jr.
Okay.
And George ends up dead, found in a suitcase.
Wow.
And so Sarah's story is really what we're going to be focusing on today, because it keeps changing.
Interesting.
So was this like a really tragic accident, maybe a drunken mistake, or is there something darker going on?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it?
Let's look into the evidence.
Well, it's interesting in this case because we actually have more than just, reports and things like that. We have a 911 call, we have police body cam footage, and we even have interrogation footage.
Oh, wow.
So we get to see a lot of how this investigation unfolded.
Yeah. And that 911 call, I mean, it's haunting, to say the least. Let's hear it.
Okay.
So Sarah's calling 911, and she's saying that she found George dead in a suitcase after they were, like, playing and hiding.
Uh-huh.
But even just in those first few seconds, it's like something's not adding up.
Yeah, right away her story has some holes in it.
Yeah.
She says she tried to give him CPR, but she also said that she found him not breathing.
Right.
So it's like she's trying to cover her bases, but not really doing a good job of it.
Right.
And then also her tone is really odd. It's strangely detached for someone who just supposedly found her boyfriend dead.
Yeah.
I mean, where's the panic you would expect?
Right. Where's the grief?
Exactly.
It's like she's almost reading a script or something.
Yeah, very calm, almost rehearsed.
Right.
It's those little cues that actually tell us more than what she's actually saying.
Yeah.
And that idea, kind of the psychology behind all this is something that we're going to see throughout this entire case.
Okay.
There are layers to her behavior and maybe what's motivating it,
Right.
whether it's her mental state or maybe the dynamics of their relationship or just how hard it is to really understand why people do things. It's really complicated.
Yeah, and speaking of complicated, it gets even more complicated when we look at the body cam footage. Because right away, she brings up her ex-husband.
Yeah,
Like, why is she doing that? Is she trying to throw the cops off?
Well, it could be that she's subconsciously trying to deflect.
Okay.
Psychologically, when we're under a lot of pressure, we tend to grab at anything that might shift the focus away from us.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's like saying, look over there, don't look at me.
Right.
And then there's how she emphasizes all these kind of random details. The
Yeah.
wine, the puzzles they were painting.
Right.
It's almost like she's trying to paint this picture of a totally normal evening.
Yeah, it was almost too perfect.
Right. Exactly.
I noticed that too. She
Okay.
kept saying they were laughing and having a good time.
Right.
And it felt really forced to me, like she was trying way too hard to convince the officers or maybe even herself.
Exactly. It makes you wonder if this is genuine shock or if she's trying to control the story.
Wow.
Is she trying to downplay any conflict that might have happened?
Yeah.
And we have to remember that everybody reacts to trauma differently. But this is where we start to think, something's not quite right.
Yeah, my spidey senses were tingling.
Yeah.
But then things take a really dark turn when the investigator reveals that they found videos.
Oh!
Videos that she took the night before.
Wow.
Let me tell you, these videos tell a totally different story than the one that she's been telling.
Really?
Oh, yeah. This is where the case completely changes. We see George trapped inside this suitcase, clearly distressed, begging to be let out.
Oh my gosh.
She's saying he can't breathe.
Wow.
And Sarah's laughing.
Oh no.
And not just like a little chuckle, but this like really cruel laughter.
That's awful.
It's chilling.
Yeah.
And the way she's talking to him is aggressive, mean, even nothing like the fun and games that she was describing earlier.
Right. The difference between what she said and what we see in the videos is unbelievable.
Yeah. It's like watching two completely different realities.
Yeah.
Let's actually hear a little bit from the interrogation when they show Sarah these videos for the first time. You can just feel the tension in the room.
Yeah.
Talk about a reaction.
Yeah.
You can hear her whole demeanor change.
Right. At first, she doesn't even want to watch it.
Right.
But as she starts to see and hear what she did, you can see the facade start to crack.
Yeah.
It seems like the reality of what happened is starting to hit her.
Yeah.
Even though she's still desperately trying to say it was all a joke.
Right. It's almost like she can't even comprehend that her actions led to this.
Right.
And the way the detectives question her is really interesting.
Yeah.
They use this good cop, bad cop routine.
Mm-hmm.
So one's understanding, the other one's a little more aggressive.
Yeah.
And they just keep pointing out the inconsistencies in her story.
It's a very classic interrogation technique.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The good cop builds rapport, offers empathy, maybe even a little bit of false hope.
Right.
while the bad cop is the one that's putting on all the pressure,
Oh, well.
pointing out the contradictions and trying to make her afraid.
Oh,
The goal is to get the suspect to break down their defenses and confess, or at least get some important information.
okay.
And in this case, it seems to be working
Yeah.
because she keeps trying to minimize her role, blaming the wine, focusing on getting her things back.
Yeah, like she's just grasping at straws.
Exactly.
There's this one moment where she seems to realize that she's in very serious trouble.
Yeah.
But it's like she can't fully accept it. It's like she's in this mental tug of war.
It's fascinating to see, but
Yeah.
also very disturbing to see how someone's mind copes with that much stress and guilt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then there's this almost absurd moment where she thinks that the detective is texting about her,
Oh, wow.
which shows how little she grasps the gravity of the situation.
Yeah, it's a weird contrast.
Yeah?
She's worried about gossip when she's facing a potential murder charge.
Right, and that's when it hits her. She's arrested
Wow.
and charged with second-degree murder.
Wow.
And even as they're putting the handcuffs on her, she's still in denial.
It's hard to believe.
And then later we find out that 6 of her 7 attorneys dropped her case,
Really?
which really makes you wonder about how strong the evidence against her is.
Yeah. What does that tell us?
So we have this seemingly normal evening that goes horribly wrong,
Yeah.
fueled by alcohol and ending with a tragic death.
Right.
But the big question is,
Was this a horrible accident?
right,
A drunken prank gone wrong?
Yep.
Or was this something more?
right,
Oh.
was this something intentional, something more sinister?
That's what we need to find out.
And that's what we'll keep talking about as we dig deeper into this case.
Okay.
We've only scratched the surface. Stay with us as we uncover more layers of this very disturbing story.
I can't wait. It really makes you think about the lines between intent and consequence.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, on the surface, it seems like a drunken game that went bad.
Yeah.
But when you dig deeper, there's just more and more questions.
So many questions. What was she thinking when she was recording those videos? I
Yeah.
mean, was she just drunk and acting stupid? Or was there something more going on? It's
Right.
like anger or resentment or even just like this weird need to control him.
Right. That's what we're trying to figure out.
Yeah.
The interrogation gives us some clues.
Okay.
Sarah says that George was in on it,
Okay.
that they were both laughing and it was all a joke. But the videos say something else.
Yeah.
He's clearly in distress, begging to get let out.
Right.
That doesn't look like someone who wants to be in there.
No, definitely not. And her language is so mean.
It is.
Insulting him, making fun of him.
Right.
It's hard to believe she loved him when you hear that.
Yeah, it's like she's trying to convince herself that it was all fun and games.
Yeah.
But the evidence tells a different story, especially those videos.
Right, and her trying to blame the wine or say, well, it wasn't her fault.
Yeah,
That makes it hard to believe her.
it does.
And something that really sticks out to me is how she keeps bringing up her ex-husband
Yeah.
in the 911 call and in the body cam footage.
Interesting.
It's like she's trying to give herself an alibi.
Yeah, maybe she's trying to show she wasn't alone with him that night.
Right.
It could be her subconscious trying to make us look somewhere else.
Right.
Or maybe she's just got a messy personal life.
Yeah.
Maybe lots of different partners. Maybe even some domestic violence in the past.
Well, she does mention that George had been arrested for domestic violence against her before.
He had.
Yeah, multiple times.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a factor.
Yeah, maybe. A history of abuse can really change the dynamics in a relationship.
Of course.
It's possible that she was holding on to resentment and anger towards him without realizing it.
Right. But she also says they were trying to work things out.
She does.
That he was in anger management and getting better.
Right, so we've got these two different sides to the story.
Yeah.
Affection, anger, resentment.
Mm.
It shows you how complicated relationships can be.
Yeah, especially when there's abuse involved.
For sure.
Yeah.
And we can't forget about the alcohol.
Right.
She admitted she doesn't usually drink.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why she wasn't thinking clearly. Maybe it made her angry, or maybe she blacked out and doesn't remember.
Right.
Alcohol can make people act in ways they normally wouldn't.
Yeah, for sure. But can it really explain all of it?
That's a good question.
I mean, the cruelty we see in the videos.
Right.
The laughing, the mocking, him not caring that he was in pain.
Yeah, can alcohol really turn someone into that?
I don't know.
Or was there something already there inside her that the alcohol just brought out?
It's really hard to say.
It is. This case is going to keep experts debating for a long time.
Yeah, I could see that.
It really makes you think about the dark side of human nature.
Yeah, it does. I keep feeling like there's something more to this.
It's like we're putting a puzzle together, but the pieces don't fit.
Exactly.
We're trying to find the truth, but all we have are these memories and stories that contradict each other.
And that's what makes true crime so fascinating.
Right. It's a look into the worst parts of humanity.
Yeah.
a puzzle with missing pieces.
And it makes you think about human behavior, about justice.
And it makes you question your own biases.
Oh, yeah.
Do we believe her when she says she's innocent,
Well-
that it was an accident?
Or do we think she's a liar who killed him?
That's what the jury had to decide.
Yeah.
But even with a verdict, this case is going to be talked about for years.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
With all the twists and turns and different stories, that disturbing evidence.
Right. And it also reminds us how dangerous alcohol can be.
Yeah.
It reminds us to be responsible for our actions.
Yeah.
And that we need to be more understanding and compassionate in our relationships.
So we've looked at the evidence and the legal stuff, the psychology of it all.
We have.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah.
What sticks out to you after learning about this case?
Yeah.
Do you believe her?
Uh-huh.
Do you think the right thing happened?
Yeah, good questions.
This case makes you question everything.
It really does. It makes you think about things you don't want to.
Right.
And maybe that's the most important thing we can take away from this.
Okay.
We need to be careful about the choices we make. We need to remember that life is fragile.
Yeah,
And we need to be more understanding even when we see the worst of humanity.
absolutely. Well said.
You know, we've been focusing on Sarah's story.
Right.
But what about George?
Yeah.
What was his life like? What led him to this?
Right.
Right.
It's easy to forget about the victims in these stories.
Yeah, their stories are important too.
Absolutely.
There's always more to find out, more sides to look at.
So true. So until next time, keep asking questions.
Yeah, keep learning.
And remember, even in the darkest parts of life,
Right.
there are always things to learn.
And things to understand.
It makes you wonder about how we decide who's responsible when you can't really tell what someone meant to do.
Yeah.
I mean, legally, it's pretty clear what's murder and what's like manslaughter, just being careless.
Right.
But like morally, it's not so easy.
No, not at all. I mean, she filmed him. She heard him say he couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
When does just being reckless turn into something criminal?
Yeah, it's where the jury has to decide. They have to look at everything and see if what she did was really murder, according to the law.
Exactly.
But even if someone's found not guilty,
yeah.
there's still the question of whether they're responsible in their own mind.
Oh, absolutely.
Can she ever really forget about this?
That's something she'll probably have to live with forever.
Yeah.
Knowing that what you did killed someone,
Right.
even if it was an accident.
It's a heavy burden.
And then there's the question of forgiveness.
Right.
Can she forgive herself?
Can his family forgive her?
Those are wounds that might never heal.
And then there's George.
Right.
He lost his life no matter what happened.
It's a tragedy.
And when you hear him in those videos,
It's heartbreaking.
it reminds you that someone really died here.
Yeah. It really drives home the fact that actions have consequences.
Yeah.
And sometimes those consequences are terrible.
And they can't be undone.
This case is a serious warning about drinking too much.
Yeah.
It's about taking responsibility for what you do.
And it's about being kind to the people in your life.
Exactly.
So we've really explored a lot with this case.
We have.
The evidence, the laws, the psychology.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most important thing here?
What really stands out to you?
Yeah, what's sticking with you after this deep dive?
Yeah, what stayed with you?
Do you think she's telling the truth?
Uh-huh.
Do you think the right thing happened?
Those are the questions that really matter.
This case really makes you think.
It does. It makes you face some hard truths about people.
About ourselves and everyone.
Maybe that's what we should learn from all of this.
What do you mean?
Well, we need to pay attention to what we're doing.
Yeah.
We need to remember that life can change in a second,
Yeah.
and we need to try to understand each other.
Even when people do terrible things.
Exactly.
I like that. A lot to think about.
You know, we spent a lot of time talking about Sarah,
Right.
but what about George?
Yeah,
What was his life like?
that's true.
How did he end up in that situation?
It's easy to forget about the victims when we focus on these crimes.
But their stories matter too.
They really do. There's always more to the story than what we see at first.
Always more to learn.
That's why we keep doing these deep dives.
Right. So until next time,
Keep asking questions.
you're learning,
And remember,
even in the darkest parts of life.
there's always something to learn.
Yeah, and there's always a new perspective to consider.